Welcome back to the Pre-Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, I am joined by Mike Carraggi. He's head of product at Patch.com. Mike started his career as a journalist at the Boston Globe before spending over a decade at Patch, where he helped grow the platform from roughly 200 to 30,000 communities nationwide. He now leads product strategy across audience, monetizations, and AI-assisted local content infrastructure. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
I am honored to have you here today. So for people meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Sure, yeah. How do you tell your aunt what you do if they ask? Because if you can explain it to your aunt, if I could explain what I do to my aunt, I feel like I've got a real clear vision of it. And I don't know to this day exactly how I would do it. I'd probably answer something different every face in the day. I think, it's product, right? So what I try to do is figure out what we're building and um, how and not necessarily how as much as kind of what, why, and how can we make things a bit easier and better for our users, for our readers, our advertisers, our customers, the people who work at Patch. And there's a level of it's a bit different, because we're a local news company, we're a national local news company. We have, as you referenced, we've got we're open in actually over 14,000 communities right now, and growing every day. And there's, as you can imagine, a lot of challenges arise in that, a lot of opportunities arise in that. And so what we do on a day to day, just like any product person, I guess, really depends on what those are. But at a high level, trying to identify opportunities, and try to figure out how to make it work best for your company, for the people who kind of rely on you as customers. And to me, I think at Patch, we have a really high burden of people who rely on us that we kind of wear pretty proudly, because it's it's such a vital part of everyone's day-to-day lives, more so now probably than ever, with given the scarcity of options and the challenges that the local news industry faces and publishers face online these days. Um, so yeah, that's my, I wouldn't tell my aunt that, but that's, I guess.
Right. Right. It's if you can articulate it, any concept, right? But if you can articulate it so a 4-year-old can understand it, then you understand the concept, right? So, um, yeah, yeah. And tell us a bit more about what problem Patch is solving. You talk about local news, and what do you think most people don't realize is still unsolved?
Boy, I guess just the local layer of the local layer of the internet is just really fragmented right now. It's if you want to know what's happening in your town, and you want to know what the important things are in your town, and that's anything from what day trash pickup is to what the rates at the local preschool are going to be. The questions I find myself asking more and more as I get older and my kids get older and get more involved in the community, when the little league schedule is, whatever it might be, what to do this weekend, who to go to when I get a flat tire, like there are all these questions, and the answers are spread everywhere across the internet, everywhere from your local Facebook community page to, what's left of sort of like the local print industries around town, maybe, and their digital counterparts, and, a number of larger outlets trying to kind of come in and plug the gaps to varying degrees of success. I think at Patch, what we're just trying to figure out is can we really, can we be an authoritative and certainly not an exhaustive source of every single thing that's happening in town, but can we tell you what you want to know? Can we tell you what matters to you, what's important to you, in a way that is, also sustainable for a business? I mean, I came up, we'll probably get to it, my story a little bit, but I came up in local news. I started at a weekly newspaper in Everett, Massachusetts, at 14 years old. And, you know, the internet was a thing, but we still had the infrastructure of this local newspaper, this local product where, you could find out, again, what the Little League score was, who died, who got married, who was born, what's for sale, who's looking to, you know, get rid of their lawnmower, what the city council meeting was about, all these things that you could find in this one kind of artifact that is obviously facing incredible challenges these days to the extent that they still exist. And so at Patch, I think we're trying to trying to capture some of that. Certainly not in a way that says we're trying to bring back what was old or what was lost. I don't think that's a winning strategy. I think we have to move forward and move forward pretty boldly and aggressively. But to do so with the standards that kind of have been established before us, and to do that in a way that again is like monetizable, such that we're able to support like living wages for local journalists who are performing this duty that like again like I think if we ever accomplish our goal of telling everyone what they need to know exactly, but we lost our ability to have local journalists be a real part of that in a way that they can be proud of and they can rely on. And we probably didn't do the job that we were trying to do. So, it's kind of, we're trying to straddle a couple of things. But I'd say, again, to get back to your question specifically, like what we're trying to solve that maybe isn't recognized is again, the local layer of the internet. Again, I'll just use the word, it's fragmented and it's unreliable in a lot of cases because of that fragmentation. And it's reliable because of the technological and business and societal changes that are happening so quickly. So, we're trying to not just keep up with it, trying to pace it. We're trying to lead the way and trying to kind of be a standard bearer for the idea of local journalism and also how that's going to kind of take shape in the future.
Right. Right. I think that being able to have local news is so important because your community around it, you want to know what's going on, right? And those local news get covered by nation news, right? So a terrorist attack somewhere becomes more important than a water issue locally or regionally or things like that, right? So, and we're so overwhelmed. The amount of information that it's out there, it's so much that it's hard to track, right? So being able to
Well,
filter out becomes
I'm
much
sorry.
more important.
Yeah, exactly. If I can interrupt, what I was going to say was, um, it's hard to really comprehend, I think, especially in today, if you grow up in the last 20 years or whatever. But the news that's happening at the Everett Herald, where I started, which deal later parted, unfortunately, but at the Everett Herald or whatever your local newspaper might be, or your local news outlet on Patch, certainly is probably more impactful to your life, largely, than what you're reading on CNN or whatever is coming up the White House or anything else. And obviously, we live in pretty extraordinary times right now. And I welcome, I'm sure people can challenge that statement right there. A lot of things that are happening seem to impact us quite a bit. But I still stand by, the things that are happening at town hall in your local elections that you're voting at are really going to impact your day to day life quite a bit more than. For most people, I think more than the stuff that gets the headlines and has all the reporters from the New York Times flying in, doing very important, vital work to the democracy and the fabric of the country. But it's a different job. What we're trying to do again is tell people what do you need to know to get through your day, to get through your week, to make your life a bit better. That's for me, again, I was at the Everett Herald, I was at the Boston Globe. I've covered politics, schools, sports, human interest, whatever, what have you. And there's something about here's what happened at the town zoning meeting that just has this way to, impact someone's kind of day-to-day life in a way that some of this other stuff, the Red Sox lost 7-4 or, whatever it might be happening, this person was elected to the state house. It's just, there's stuff that these happen at this low level that's really granular and really impactful to people.
Right. Right. And the before the internet, you could get access to all of that through local newspapers, but after the boom of the internet, then the newspapers became obsolete because they could access a lot of information through internet, but they lost that local thing, right? So going back to product, how do you think about product strategy differently because of your editorial background?
It's funny. I think we all have imposter syndrome to an extent in every walk of life and every profession. And and for me, especially in product management, from what I see on, the Reddit boys or the LinkedIn influencers or whatnot, and just people I talk to. And for me, it can be quite strong sometimes because, I grew up as a reporter and I didn't make the change to product until a couple of years into Patch. And, I'm still learning every day. And I think we all are. And for me, it's man, I didn't grow up reading Marty Cagan. I mean, I've since been influenced by him, but I didn't grow up reading this stuff. I didn't go to school for product management or for business or for finance. I mean, again, I've since spent quite a bit of time learning to know. I didn't go to school for, the technical expertise, on web development or anything like that. But what I kind of realized was that what I perceived as kind of a weakness, and in some cases, certainly an argument that maybe it still is, but I think is actually kind of a strength at times. And what I mean by that is coming in as a journalist and someone with a media background, or I guess a reporter background in particular. And I've led editorial teams and whatnot, but you're kind of an on the ground reporter. Like one of your primary objectives and one of your primary responsibilities, and the best reporters can take a pretty complex issue or an issue that you might not know a lot about and that you as a reporter might not know a lot about. And you have to kind of become an expert in that overnight and learn enough about it to then translate it in a way that the layperson who may be reading your story, who again isn't an expert in zoning laws or whatever the school committee was debating, or whatever whatever example you want, and it has to be understandable in a way that they can digest it and learn it. And then you kind of have to move on and go to the next thing. And you still were able to pick up some stuff, but you kind of have to pick up and drop a lot of things, and certainly juggle a lot of things. Obviously, is I'm sure every product person is familiar with. But the ability to understand something and pick it up kind of quickly, to learn enough about it, and then to such that you can then communicate it in a way that again is like easily understandable. That's what reporting is, and that's really like that's what product is. I mean, that is that's a lot of what product is. And obviously, there are things like stakeholder management and communications, and like I've always thought myself to be someone who can interact with people because you have to, as a reporter, again, the best of us, I still say us, as I'm writing a story in a couple of years, but can get someone to open up, get someone to, you can build trust with these people and win trust with these people. And again, stop me if what I'm saying is like, hey, wait, that's what we do in product management, right? Like we build trust with people, we build bridges. We're trying to open up lines of communication. We're trying to bring people along and get them aligned. And a lot of that is just strategy of kind of communication and heck, I mean, we're also used to working late and skipping meals because you're whatnot. And I guess there's some overlap there and between reporting and doing product. But I really think that ability to learn, to spit back out, to translate, to communicate, are things that were pretty helpful for me in my product journey. And I wouldn't have had those if I maybe had, I don't know, if I had skipped if I wasn't a reporter and I did take some like more traditional path. And also I would argue, and this isn't any kind of, I'm not coping here, but I'd always say that at the rate of which things are changing, there certainly is a standard and still a certain like philosophy and skills that I think are important to have and to grow on as a foundation. But things are changing so quickly. And I, for one, am happy that I don't feel burdened and weighed down and handcuffed by what I might have read in a book growing up, what I might have, learned at a class, what I might have had a boss 15 years ago tell me for the moment 15 years ago, which is largely useless now. And then again, that's not to dump on anything that's more foundational, but and we're doing things now with of course with AI. And I say we as an industry and as a society that it really probably flushed a lot of that down the toilet. And I think people who might be trying to hold on to the way things were and the way they were supposed to be, like that's just it's never a good it's never a good strategy in general. But particularly now, like you really have to come with things with open arms and be willing to say, you know what, this is a new tool and this is a new way of doing things, and it's going to cut out this traditional way, but that's fine. Like we're not here to do, being a successful product manager is not, or a product executive or a product leader or thought influencer or whatever you want to call it. Like it's not doing, what was laid out as some kind of abstract rule book, or it's not doing what worked 10 or 15 years ago. It's what's working today. It's like delivering value to the people, users that, people who use your product, no matter who they might be. And there's new ways to do that today, I think, than there were before. And of course, again, I can always hear people saying, well, value is value, that doesn't change. And there are, of course, like things that are so foundational that you can't shake them. And I hear them. I'm not trying to speak over that, but I do think it's important to have a real flexible outlook with where things are going, with where things are today, and saying, you know what, like, whatever Marty Cagan might have written, whatever, in whatever era, like it's just different now. So, sometimes I get pushback on that when I talk to people who are a bit more experienced in the field, and that's their right. And who knows, they're probably correct. But I'll tell you that I've found success for myself, but, for Patch, in not having, I certainly have strongly felt beliefs, but I hold them quite loosely because I wasn't ingrained with like a traditional product upbringing, I guess. So that mixed with what I did bring in from editorial, I think kind of helps.
Right. Right. That's very interesting idea. I mean, the concept of, I think that a lot of the overlap is that we're talking about people. So it's reading people, understanding people, becoming a domain expert of a specific problem niche, so those three things is what allows you to become a great product manager, because it's understanding what people tells you and what people don't tell you in order to understand what we need to build in order to provide value for those same people, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes users cannot articulate what they actually want, right?
Mhm. Yep, exactly. It's really well, thank you for picking up one piece that I left off there. Being a reporter, you're sifting through. There's what people say, and there's what people mean. And those are very often
Right.
two distinct things. I think it's coming on a great reporter to have that skill, a great product person to have that skill. I'd say that's another serious overlap. So I've actually, like I said, I went from thinking I have some imposter syndrome about it to, I still do sometimes. I think we all do sometimes, but mo- on balance, I probably feel more confident given my background as opposed to the other way around. I'll also say, as I'm sure that we will center a lot of conversation around AI and whatnot, but to just start it or whatever, like, if I was, as someone who's spent his life writing, in writing well enough to have been paid for it in my life, like, you know, yeah, you see that something comes out and it lets people write now. All of a sudden, people who couldn't write can now write, and I would argue it's not very good, but it's getting better, and I'm sure it'll continue to improve. But it kind of takes away this like edge you've got. Like I always had an edge, whether it's in product or in writing or just whatever, where I was able to do that. And you see it taken away from you a bit or dulled a bit because now everyone has this floor. But that goes for everything. It goes for someone like me who comes into product with a limited technical understanding when I started. Again, to have since certainly improved. But I don't my technical floor just by the basis of using AI, um, and my floor on a lot of skills that otherwise I might not be as sharp is has raised, for all of us because so I might have dulled an edge in writing, although I still hope to maintain some of it. Um, but I've also lost I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a deficit or reduce my deficit in other areas thanks to AI. And so like it's a good time for someone to like it's a good time. I got lucky and I fell into a journey that was well timed given what AI does allow for. And I don't think that anyone can just wake up and do product and they have an AI system and it's like, hey, I'm using ChatGPT to do this, that, and the other thing. I don't mean it like that at all. You still need your distinct edges and strengths and judgment, obviously. And it's probably cliche already at this point, given how fast the conversations have evolved. But obviously, what AI is not very great at right now, judgment. And that's probably going to stay the case. But being able to leverage it as a tool to raise our floors, I certainly have benefited from that.
Right. Right. I think that AI it average everything out. So it's a master of none. So it is our judgment as humans that guide it. So we can use it to build so many interesting things, but it requires our judgment, our ideas as input. And then it can expand it into, if you're vibe coding as a non-technical product owner, then you can build a prototype and show it to users, right? Or you can make your idea into something more tangible, right? Whereas you couldn't do that before, right?
Yeah, you can articulate what you want out of a product so
Right,
much more easily, so much more quickly, and so much more richly. I mean, you can really show what you want it to do. And like
right.
one other thing I'd say on top of judgment, which I think is again, it's cliche at this point, although it's very, very true. One thing I hear less about is like discipline, and maybe that goes hand in hand with judgment. But now that you have like the world at your fingertips technologically, to be able to build whatever you want at any given time, and this goes, for anyone. I mean, it certainly goes for people who maybe are less in the day to day grind of developing. I don't think developers fall into this trap as much, certainly, but the product side, it's like because of what you can do is so expanded. You're you find yourself like, man, I could just go do this tomorrow and then do this tomorrow. And I could solve this problem tomorrow. And it's still, well, the developmental cycle has been reduced, 100-fold, accelerated 100-fold. The product cycle is, it's accelerated because we can crunch data and we can get maybe generate some ideas or brainstorm or get some copy generation. But by and large, the product cycle is still not nearly as accelerated as the developmental cycle. And so, or the development cycle. So the discipline it takes to still understand this still needs, if we can get stuff out there, we can test it quick and dirty, and we have to do that. We have to move fast. But if we want something that's probably going to work and not just say, hey, we did work, but we did good work, and here are the results that back it up. I think that you need to maintain not just the judgment, but the discipline to fight that urge off sometimes.
Right. I think that this happens with all automation, that the more automation you have, the more productivity power you have, the more responsibility you have towards, providing the direction. Because if you have the wrong direction, whatever it's going to build is not going to be useful or impactful. So, to your point, on the software side, we can build with agentic coding, we can build things faster, but we have a high responsibility on the product side to provide those requirements with more clarity.
Well said. Yeah, I agree with that.
So what do you think is changing local news and community publishing, with AI right now?
It's like a challenging question sometimes, because I think people on the outside might think, oh, great, like we're using AI to write stories. Like that's what the future is, or that's what the future knows, AI stories. And I see, some box scores of games being rewritten as game stories for a sports league or something like that. So I think a lot of people think it's we're creating just mountains of content and stories, and going to replace editors or reporters or something like that with AI. Not the case. Like, I will say that there is space in the current, ecosystem, and in the future, of course, for some more low touch content that I would say is probably not a waste, but like an unnecessary burden of a human person's time. Sometimes you'll see like a little game story of a sports league written via a box score, and it's kind of generated by AI. And sometimes it'll be like a light, I don't know, like a summary of a event or a business or something like that. And like, I think that that's probably where you want to apply this stuff, to scale out local information, but to respect and save the time for like reporters and editors to do real important stories. And so like, and editors and reporters will, that's a separate issue of them having their own AI assisted tools to make their lives a bit easier. Maybe put a press release into something that summarizes it, or maybe use a copy editing check or something like that. Like, these are, I think, good uses of AI, not just good, but ethical. And I'll say up front, like, I'm not an AI denier by any means, but I don't intend on losing the soul of what we do, or local journalism, but just to serve AI's efficiency. Like, that's not, like, I think the business that we want to be in, that Patch is in. And so I would just say, like, so there's that, but there's also like, we're able to scale a bit more. We're able to moderate comments a lot more efficiently. I think our comment system at Patch right now is more robust than it's ever been. And user generated a lot of user generated content, we're able to take a look at that pretty quickly and say, does this belong on the site? Does it provide value? Is it appropriate? Is it local? And so we're able to provide a lot more content and value, or like at least vet and moderate it. And there are, light, human reviews to a lot of these things, but we're pretty comfortable helping, having it help expand and scale our user generated content. May it be like, again, comments or endorsements where people come onto Patch and they'll tell someone, they'll endorse a local business, and they'll tell the community why this local business means so much to them. Like, we don't want someone to come in and just flame that local business or anything like that. And at scale, it's hard to keep track of that stuff. So stuff like that, that it's really helpful, like a local news scaling way. But like I assume your question is more toward like the actual local, like the reporters maybe, or like the local news ecosystem on that front. And I don't know. Like, it's a complicated question. I mean, a lot of, if I was a reporter right now, I would I'd be really skeptical because first of all, you have to be skeptical because you're a reporter and that's your nature. And I, and I would say that society does not have a great track record of like, you know, not embracing technology to its absolute fullest capacity. Consequences be damned. But I would say a patch, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing it if I thought that we were ever using it to have any kind of like negative impact on the industry. And that's not to say that we don't use it and it will maybe make a judgment call that we wouldn't have made or that is straight up just wrong. And we would go in and fix that or correct it and do our best to learn from it, make sure it doesn't happen again. So there's obviously bets you have to make and bets you have to place to be as efficient as you need to be and as valuable as you need to be to your users. But like I said, I think I think I can stand by like the way we use it. I know your question isn't exactly the ethics or whatever. I think we can stand by the way we've been using AI and experimenting with it, which I think is really like with an eye toward just making life easier for the reporters and their job easier and making life in one's community a bit more robust and rich on patch.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think AI opens a lot of possibilities. We can use it for nefarious purposes or positive purposes for the society, right? And I agree with you. I mean, if you can use it to monitor comments and be able to weed out those, comments that are not providing value to the conversations or just are insults, right? Then you're providing a lot of value to the users, right? Then I've seen people, not talking about patch, but I've seen people using AI to do cyber attacks because they can now simulate users better, right? Or they can use it to generate fake content that it's not providing a lot of value for society, right? And that those are, less positive, uses, but it's a double-edged sword, right? Once you have more powerful AI tools, you can use it for one way or another, right? My question was more on the philosophical side of the impact of AI on the local news, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, again, I agree with you. And again, it's a fine line because like local news is an industry that is like self-governed by this like unwritten code of ethics. I mean, news in general, it
Right.
has been for a long time, and it always hasn't been a great code of ethics. I mean, you look back to like the turn of the century or the turn of the 20th century, and like the kind of the realization of kind of different news outlets and whatnot back then, or even at the founding of the country, and how news outlets were used. I mean, it hasn't always been this like beacon of virtue, like I think we have than it is now. I think it's incumbent on us now, or to the extent where anyone thinks it is a beacon of virtue now, but it's incumbent on us now, given the how we live, where we live, the things that are ongoing, to be a place. And I say this to Patch, I would say this to Washington Post, to anyone, to New York Times or Boston Globe, or like, you have to be able to be somewhere where someone can go and know if there's any trustworthy, accurate information. You just have to. I mean, that's just table stakes. And I think that once AI casts a doubt upon that, then you probably lost the plot to the extent where it can help you do that more efficiently and better. And I think that you're a responsible steward of the technology.
Right. Right. I mean, I think I've seen the importance of local news with what happened a few months ago here in Guadalajara, where the whole city got seized by the cartel because of the situation where they pursue the leader of the cartel, and they did this coordinated attack. So 3 days later, everything was normal in the city, but global news, everybody was talking about it, and it was taking so much out of proportion of what's really happening on the ground, right? And the only way that you can learn that is by when you're living there, you can learn that by looking the local news.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. You would never when there's a big national story, I implore people, like, go to the local news source in that town because they have people there, they have sources, they know the community, they know the people who are impacted. Sometimes they'll see this big thing like what's happened with the ice stuff in Minnesota, and um, you know, I got my news from the New York Times, like a lot of people did, but I'll tell you, I went to the Minneapolis Star Tribune and the local reporters there, and made sure that like, we have to support them, especially when we're leaning on them for this kind of really important coverage. And also just like, if you want to be educated on it, if you want like a full picture, a trustworthy picture, like go to a place where there's where someone has connections and someone knows the area, and one of the things about local news and at Patch, um, to it's just important to be able to rely on someone who knows the lay of the land.
Right, right. And we are so used, numbed, I think the word is numbed, to see so many, news that are over exaggerated, right? That the global news are looking more for the headline, right? And they keep over exaggerating. And we have we as a society, right, such a short attention span that they keep trying to find these hooks to cut our attention, right? So in that process, we also lose the nuances of the problem, right? It's easy to say, oh, these are the bad guys, and these are the good guys, right? And they simplify the story. Whereas if you read about it in more detail, there's so many nuances that probably there is not one bad guy. It's more complex than that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like to bring it back, like to bring it back to Patch, I guess, like I said, news has probably always relied on viewers since the very, very beginning, because the person writing it needs to get paid in some aspect and advertising and all that stuff. And it isn't a new phenomenon to paint an overly broad picture in the news. That's far from a new phenomenon. But I think and to bring it back to Patch a little bit, and I don't mean to promote Patch with this necessarily, but I think we're really focused on news is better when you do not require people to read it for you to be successful. And what I mean by that is if you can go out there and write a story that you think needs to be told, regardless of how sensational a headline you can put on it, even if it's a very quote unquote, I wouldn't say bland, but even if it's a quote unquote, just a headline that wouldn't generate all this furor and wouldn't generate all this national news and clicks and all that. But the quality of the story, the importance of the story, is such that people need to read it. Then you're doing a better service to the community. So Patrick really try to or one thing I'm always trying to do. We're always trying to do we're actually really focused on now. How can we monetize our product, our company in a way that is less and less reliant on, someone just coming in and viewing a story that they saw because the headline was wow, I got to click that headline. We want these people and we're very good at getting them. So it's not that we're not good at it. We're very good at it, but we would like to rely on something that's maybe a bit different so that we can't be accused of, and our reporters don't have the pressure of, you got to get eyeballs on this story because this is how we're going to pay our bills this month. That's not the business I think we want to be in.
Because you're not the user, you cannot put your assumptions into what is being built, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's just important to it's just important to have a real open mind, to not stick to anything too clearly. And in the name, again, back to AI, one of the tools that's available to us now is just learning quicker because of really data capabilities and stuff, and interacting quicker because of just tools. I am now, I would categorize myself, even as someone on the product team here, and if I had a product to Patch, I would consider myself a part-time, very unskilled, very very poor, but nonetheless developer, in the sense where I am putting a lot of work into creating things. Now they're not very good, and I need the actual team, the actual development team, to apply their expertise. And thank God for them. And I think we have one of the most um, one of the most incredible teams, personally and professionally, that I could ever hope for a Patch, actually. But before it gets to that, sometimes it's prototyping or something a little bit deeper. You're tweaking something. You're learning how to, I'm building emails where in the past I wouldn't have designed an email. And I would say you're a product person, yeah, but today you're a product person, and that's probably your specialty or mine. But I'm also a very poor developer, a very poor designer. But I'm still doing these things. I'm still developing and designing because that's what we're expected to do now. And I think the developers in our team, to a better extent than I am a developer, they're great. They're doing product work. They're doing design work because that's the tools that are available to us, have made it possible for, confident people who want to learn to be able to wear 2-3 hats at once, and not in a way of, man, I'm working myself to the bone, I'm doing 2 or 3 people's jobs. That's not it. You're merging these jobs together, and they're really becoming one more. And I'd be shocked if in 2 years or 3 years, we don't just have a product or a dev or it's just one to, not just I don't mean we at Patch, I mean globally, the job is just going to be one job, and you're going to have a specialty. But I don't see like an excuse in the future of very super distinct walled off professions here within the product and development and design world.
Right. It used to be more of a wall, right? You're on one side or the other side, right? And then it was a clear edge on the roles and responsibilities. And now that line is blurred, right? So people are expecting more from the product side to do more design work, and from the design work to do more product. And the same for the development, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of spec-driven development, where basically you have an agent coding based on your specs, right? So how do you come up with those specs? Well, you have to start thinking as a software engineer more as a product than as a software engineer, right? Because you're delegating the responsibility of implementation to the agent, right?
Yeah, I think the writing, I think, and I'm gonna step in hot water here by accident, but like I think the writing code for our development team, I think they would say has been replaced by some product writing,
Right.
it, they're still responsible for the code that goes out, and it's there's rigorous review and whatnot, and they're still guiding it, but there's certainly product thinking that they're applying to it. It's absent me, like sometimes completely absent. I think it's great. I think it's great because I think it's the future. I think it's great because it helps us move quicker. I think it's great because, man, like we have who's smarter? Hey, who do you know that's smarter than a developer? Like no one that I know is smarter than a developer. Now you're able to allow these people to flex this other part of their very powerful brain to make something better. And who knows the product better than a developer? Very rarely will you find someone at the company who has a real better understanding. So it's just been like um, a great boost for. I know that there's fears and they're probably fair and they're probably more existential than what's my product career going to be or what's my development career going to be. There's probably bigger ones on a bigger level surrounding the technology and who's in control of it and what people do with it. But on this level, I got to say that the benefits of it have have outweighed the negatives, I think. And I aim to keep it that way for ways the way we're leveraging it and benefiting from it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that the benefits are outweigh the cons. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've seen kind of either providing too much hype for what AI could do, or seeing AI as an enemy, right? Or trying to fight it back, right? And I think those two approaches are incorrect, in my opinion. I think it's more about how can we leverage to be more productive, to focus more on the core of our roles, right? And to be able to integrate better, change the dynamic, how we work together, to, for benefit for the company, for the users, and society, right? So going back to asking you more about advice, what advice would you give to product managers that are either starting their career or they are thinking on getting into the role? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess just to be kind of to trust in yourself, because I think that it's such a goofy piece of advice. You need to be able to make decisions with firmness and clarity, and that does not mean making the right decision every time. In fact, it probably means the opposite quite often. But having some confidence in yourself and your skills and in your talents, and even those which you haven't quite developed yet, your ability to learn, it helps you move forward. Like we always say there's like the three ways in which you can go. You can make the right decision, the wrong decision, or no decision. You'd rather make, of course, the right one, but if not, then make the wrong one, because the no decision that's a real bummer. Like that's going to kill you. That's going to, that's, you're not going to learn from that. You're not going to, you're not going to move forward if you zoom out, and you're zooming out and having the perspective of, trying to build something that is like trying to build something that's a system, and not having this day to day. Like I'm guilty of this very much so. And because of that, it would be part of my advice to product folks, like, especially as you become a leader, but even I think on a very granular level, like your day to day work is important, and it's really hard, and it's really pressure filled, and it's constant, and it's very time intensive and bio intensive. Um, but a real great product person, and I think a great product leader, especially, is able to have um, a system and and systemize kind of their excellence and systemize and automate their excellence to an extent where like they don't have to be in it every single day doing things that are time intensive and that doing things that are um, really really not going to have the ROI that you'd like for it to have. And I would just say like step back, see like how you can, maybe you don't have to impact things as hands on as you think, which I is something I struggle with. You don't have to execute every single thing, operationalize it, create a system that sustains excellence, and sustains reaching your outcomes. But I'd say like those two things are, you know, it'd probably be a lot more advice than that. Um, read the newsletters, stay up on what's happening. Um, remember that I guess one big thing I'd say is just remember that like the people you're working with are all probably with you to be working toward a goal. And
So, Mike, tell us a little bit about what the future for Patch you envision. Where do you think you can take Patch next?
I would say Batch is going to be a place where you're able to come as a reader. Yeah, I want to focus on the readers here. You'd be able to come as a reader and figure out what you need to know locally that's important to you wherever you are, and whether it's via your email or on site or whatever the emerging technology of the day is. I think that we want you to be able to be confident that what you're getting at Patch is pretty quick, accurate, local information, kind of stamped with the Patch, stamp of approval here. Because as the world gets, again, as local news gets quite fragmented, and as local verification and just verification and authenticity of anything gets kind of dissolved in the age of AI and memification, people making videos and photos and AI written content and all that stuff. Like, we just want you to know that when you come to Patch, you're getting the local authenticity of whatever it is that you're looking for, reading, learning about, events, businesses, local news, school news, sports scores, whatever it is, your community, your conversations with your fellow community members that you're having on the site, whatever it might be. And if you're, a customer, if you're someone who wants to spread the word on Patch and let people know about the fact that you matter on Patch, that you matter in your community, if you're like a local bakery, or if you're someone who's hosting whatever it might be, a theater production or something like that, like if you're on Patch, we're going to let people know that you are important to your community, that you matter to your community. We don't want to just stick a sticker up there and say, hey, like this thing is happening. This place exists. Like, that's great. There's a space for that. It's called the bulletin board down at the local coffee shop probably. But like, we want to be able to deliver on a promise of you're going to matter in your community. And being a Patch is like part of that. We're going to tell people that you matter to your community. We're going to tell people that you're an important part of the fabric of the community. And hopefully that drives a great turnout for you. Hopefully that gets people to your event. Hopefully it gets people to your business. But what we're really focused on is like, we want people to see you on Patch and increasingly off Patch, thanks to, emergence of obviously traditional search, but also AI search. And we also want people to know, like, once they see you, man, you matter to the community, which is really important to us. I don't think we're doing the job for our customers that we want to do if someone doesn't see them and say like, oh, this place is not just existing, it's actually a part of the community.
Mike, I think that having in this world where we have so much synthetic content, synthetic everything, having a curated company that is providing a curated content and local news is becoming much more important in this current age. So I think that what you're doing at Patch has a big impact on society.
Thanks. Yeah, I would encourage everyone listening, if you made it this far, thank you. But I'd encourage you to, find your local Patch wherever you are. There's something for you. And then let us know what you need more of, what we can do better, how we can help make life in your community a bit more informed, and we would love to have you and see you on the Patch.
Awesome. Mike, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.